Fifth Circuit says the federal ban on handgun sales to young adults is unconstitutional. I'm a very pro 2A kind of dude. Nice, solid, nice. And I think that this was an obvious thing to me. Like I said in the opening, like the idea that a young person can be sent off to war, that they can vote, that they're expected to pay taxes, they're expected to do all the things that an adult can do, but they can't own a handgun. They can own rifles, but they can't own a handgun. That to me is just offensive. So Reason reports the government failed to persuade the appeals court that the 18 to 20-year-olds are not part of the people, or that the age restriction is consistent with the historical tradition of firearm regulation. The federal ban on handgun sales to adults younger than 21 violates the Second Amendment. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit ruled today. That law is unconstitutional in light of our nation's historic traditions of firearm regulation. A 3-judge panel unanimously concluded in Reese versus ATF. Today's ruling is yet another critical FPC Firearms Policy Coalition win against an immoral and unconstitutional unconstitutional age-based gun ban, said Brandon Combs, president of the Firearms Policy Coalition. FPC is great. They're at Gun Policy on Twitter if you want, or on X if you want to give them a follow, which challenged the law along with 2 would-be handgun buyers and 2 other gun rights groups. We look forward to restoring the Second Amendment rights of all peaceable adults throughout the United States. Under 18 U.S.C. 922b1, a provision that was included in the Gun Control Act of 1968, a federally licensed firearm dealer may not sell handguns to any individual who the licensee knows or has reasonable cause to believe is less than 21 years of age. The Fifth Circuit upheld the restriction in 2012, but that was a decade before the Supreme Court clarified the constitutional test for gun control laws in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Bruin did a really, really, really big service for gun rights. So Bruin says that you have the right to keep and bear arms. It affirms the wording of the Second Amendment. It says that you cannot be barred from carrying a gun on your person for self-defense. Now, there's still a lot of jurisdictions that are trying to prevent that. New York City is one of the most notable, where they make it exceedingly difficult for you to attain a license to carry a gun. D.C. is another place where it's very difficult. You have to be from D.C. I think there's only one FFL in D.C., and I think it might even be in the police department, like actually in the one of the police, whatever the headquarters or whatever. So I don't know, but I'm not 100% positive of that. But I don't know how they could argue against that. You know, you have to pay taxes, so how can they say that you're a second class?
You go to war.
Yep.
You could die for your country. You should have the right to have a gun. The First Amendment and the Second Amendment are the 2 most important laws on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. The rest of the world is like begging us to keep this because we make it a lot easy for them to hear the truth. Mm-hmm. And we must protect that at all costs.
Yep.
All costs. And like some of these judges that the Bidens put in, dangerous people. So I'm hoping that we can do it. So I'm very happy about that. 18-year-olds are interesting. That's an interesting age, but they should be allowed. It's a constitutional right.
There's something that goes along with rights that is always just kind of glossed over, and there are responsibilities that come with all rights. Just because you have the right to carry a gun doesn't mean that you don't have the responsibility to not destroy other people's property, not harm other people. The gun is not licensed to shoot whatever you feel like. Right. It's not licensed to behave like a crazy person. It's not licensed to go and do whatever you want. It comes with all of your liberties come with responsibility. So if you can say whatever you want, right? But you have to understand that, like, you might upset someone if you say the wrong thing, and then there might be repercussions from that. People might be around you. You might offend people, and things can escalate into where they decide that they're in a position where it's acceptable to violate your rights. But you say things, and the words that you say, you're responsible for them. So if you expect to be able to have friends and want to have people that actually want to be around you, you have to speak kindly about people, and these responsibilities come with the liberties that we have.
There's a lot of people that mistake the freedom of speech with freedom of expression. A lot of people get upset with that. You know, you get banned here. And listen, I've been shadow banned everywhere, so I get it. You know, and there is a discussion whether Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube and all them are extensions of the U.S. government. There's an argument for that, you know. But what I'm going to say is, like, you know, unless somebody's showing up to your door and ready to arrest you, that's not violating your freedom of speech. That's what freedom of speech is about. I can criticize the government without going to jail. And we've seen people's freedom of speech being violated.
Oh, yeah.
And it's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, there are consequences for actions. I'm a stand-up comic. I have people come on stage wanting to fight me all the time. And it's not even that bad of jokes. There are people out there that have weird reactions to words.
Were you attacked recently?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Where was that?
Physically?
It was at this club that I love. It's in Hollywood. It happens occasionally. I don't want to say your name because I don't want them to get this kind of Roadhouse kind of brand. But if I would have known it was Roadhouse, I would have reacted to it a little different. Because as he was coming up, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get banned from this club. They're never going to hire me again. I'm never going to do stand-up here. So the guy grabs me, and I just grab my microphone. I'm like, dude, calm down. Just calm down. Be cool. Be cool. Wow. Happened to be a bunch of Sam Tripoli fans. They all kind of beat the guy up. But yeah, so you don't have freedom of expression. People are going to react to it. But the key is to teach people not to have emotional reactions to everything. That's a big problem we have in this country. Everyone's emotional. So with a gun, same thing. Like you can have the right to protect yourself, but doesn't mean you can go and harm people because you just don't like them.
Right.
What do you guys know about the Gun Control Act of 1968?
No, I don't.
So that's one of the things that I think the FPC is looking to get repealed. I believe the Gun Control Act of 1968 it's not what has the SBR and SBS bans. Actually, let me look it up to make sure. I don't want to speak out of turn here.
I'm doing that enough.
So gun control, it says
Not at all.
What was that?
I'm doing enough of that.
You're doing great. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled that Section 2 of the Act of June 30th, 1954, as amended, is amended by deleting and $35 million for each of the fiscal years 1968 and 69, and inserting in lieu thereof a comma and the following for fiscal year. Okay, so this is just a funding thing. Is amended by adding the new Section 3. There are hereby authorized to be appropriated such sums as the Secretary of the Interior may find necessary, not to exceed $10 million for any 1 year, to alleviate suffering and damage result. This is not the Gun Control Act. The Congress hereby declares that the purpose of this title is to provide support to federal, state, and local law enforcement officials in their fight against crime and violence. This is the long. Okay, all right. Let's see, as used in this chapter, the term person in terms. Okay, so this is definitions. This doesn't have a synopsis or whatever. Actually, you know what? Let me see if Grok can give me a synopsis.
But back to Sam's point, why you do that, it's why a lot of these people who have no morality and live in a bubble think that something like words can actually be violence.
Yeah.
Right? Because like the Second Amendment scares them and the First Amendment scares them. And to them, both things can harm them.
Yeah.
Actually,
well, free speech doesn't do hate speech. Yeah. It doesn't.
But also, silence is violence. So it's like it's hard to know what's what these days. You know?
When you live when you're born into like the best hospitals, live behind gated communities, go to the best schools, go to the best colleges, intern at the best places, you never feel real world consequences.
Yeah.
So words are violence to them.
To them for sure.
Yeah.
It's all relative.
Mean comments like that's hate speech.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so it's very important to protect that all the time. And that's kind of what we're fighting, people that don't live in a normal reality.
That's why I think that comedy was one of the first things to be attacked by the cult, because comedy calls out a lot of the hypocrisy and absurdity in the society.
And it's also that, YouTubers and comedians are the ones who can create art without banker money.
Right.
Like in the past, you needed to have cash to put on a play, make an album, make a movie, all that stuff. Yep. Now you don't need that. So they're attacking that because you don't have to play their game anymore.
Exactly.
So the Gun Control Act of 1968, the primary aim was to regulate the firearms industry and curb the illegal trafficking of firearms, sought to keep gun guns out of the hands of those not legally entitled to possess them, such as felons, minors, and those with mental health issues. Licensing, the act mandated that anyone engaged in the business of selling firearms must be licensed. So that was about FFLs, and it listed the record-keeping requirements. Prohibited persons, it expanded the category of individuals prohibited from purchasing or possessing. That included convicted felons, fugitives, drug users, or addicts, those adjudicated as mentally defective, and individuals dishonorably discharged from the military, which I think that's wrong.
Weird.
That's pretty bad. The act banned mail order sales, import restrictions. All new manufactured firearms had to have serial numbers, and it had the restriction to people under 21. There's a lot in this that actually, if you get into it and really drill down on it, a lot of the stuff is unconstitutional. There's no reason for people dishonorably discharged from the military to not be allowed to have their Second Amendment rights. It makes sense to say drug users or addicts can't, but at the same time, the ability to find out if they are, you have to things like tests or whatever. You shouldn't have to be.
How do they define drugs?
That's the exact point. Yeah, well, yeah, I'd say.
Because it could be SSRIs, it could be street stuff.
Yeah, well, I could be doing speed or I could be doing Adderall.
Right.
What's the difference between those two?
Right.
One is, so.
Phil, did you say it created the serial numbers too?
Yeah, it's why.
What's your opinion on that? I never even thought of that.
So because I'm from a state where you don't have really records, like New Hampshire doesn't have any gun laws, right? It's a constitutional carry. So I'm kind of neither here nor there on serial numbers.
Yeah.
If you don't want a serial number on your gun, you file it off. Technically,
where
it's
my gut
illegal.
is too.
That's not legal to do.
Yeah.
That's what criminals do. You know, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that's what criminals do. If they just file it off or whatever. Or you can make your own guns, which is still possible. And if you make a gun, you're technically supposed to do that. But if you make a gun for the purpose of doing crime, I assume they're probably not going to take the time to put a serial number on it. So I'm not particularly against it, but at the same, because again, they're not even supposed to keep any of that stuff on file. The federal government's not supposed to have any files on it. So the federal government has the FFLs hold on to the paperwork, and the FFLs are supposed to hold the paperwork for a certain number of years, I believe.
Yep.
But I'm not sure. They might have to keep them forever, indefinitely, and that I'm not particularly fond of. But the thing is, when they make the FFLs hold on to them, that's just the federal government offloading the responsibility so they can access them. Because if an ATF agent walks into any FFL and says, "Let me see your books. I want to see this time frame or produce this. We found this gun at a crime scene.
Right.
I think you sold it. Find it." Like, they have to go and spend time doing work for the feds.
Right.
And if you don't, you're going to lose your FFL. So that, I think, is a horrible.
They outsource it.
Yeah, and that's something that they do all the time. That's what the CIA does when it comes to, they're not supposed to look in on Americans. So they'll talk to the British.
Cutouts, government cutouts.
Exactly. Talk to the British or talk to some other intel organization and say, look in on this person.
So dirty.
So that way they can say, well, we didn't do it. Someone else did it, which is
plausible deniability.
It's the whole the it's just getting around the system, So I don't think that it's good. I think the whole thing should be repealed.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
But I mean, the import restrictions, I guess you could make an argument. The mail order sales, because of the fact that they do background checks, you're not going to get rid of that. But there's a lot in here that they could probably get rid of just under the auspices of Bruin.
Was there an event that was the catalyst to that? Do you know?
I don't know.
It says in the response to the assassinations of RFK,
oh wow,
JFK, and Martin Luther King, as well as a shooting at the University of Texas in 1966.
They love taking advantage of tragedy.
The shooting at Texas, that was not private. That was the Army or the National Guard.
No, that was Kent State. That was Kent State.
Kent State. Oh, Kent.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they use all those things to be like, oh, we can pass this.
That's
right
what
now.
they do with
That's
all
my
the
favorite thing.
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
That's the purpose of all
What's
these.
the saying
shootings.
again? Never let a good tragedy go to waste.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is very weird, and here's where it gets. I think it's weird. We had a couple guys on, Jim Lee, Topher Gardner. They were talking about frequencies, manipulating weather and stuff like that. But they talked about frequencies and the ability to manipulate frequencies over a far-ranging area, right? And
Cymatics.
So So do you guys remember when I forget what the scandal was, but a Obama scandal dropped. Like I forget what the exact scandal was, but something he was involved, or maybe it was the Pfizer wiretap or something. It was last year, something like that.
Okay.
So it drops. This is a big story. Next day, Kansas City parade for winning Super Bowl, shootings, bang, bang, bang. Now that becomes the national discussion. Nobody's discussing the what just happened with Obama, right? So I think that they can put out frequencies, and whoever they get to do crazy stuff, they do crazy stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm
like the
I'm with you on that.
frequencies, like-
MK Ultra
Because of the
stuff.
MK Ultra is why I'm with you on that. And
Yes,
because of
SS.
the evolution. We were talking about SSRIs and
Yes.
Eli
Did I
literally
lose everybody on that one too?
I'm wondering what you mean by frequencies. Are you talking about like frequencies of vibration, like sound waves? Are you talking about frequencies of radio waves? What do you mean by
Maybe a combination.
Were they talking about somatics?
Yeah.
Where they can take a frequency and then take a solid object and turn it into certain shapes. But people will then expand on that and say they could shoot you with it. And
But you know, they
Havana
have
syndrome type
voice
things.
to God technology. They've talked about before, but they can just put out frequency that kind of triggers people to do certain things
It used
based
to be,
on pharmaceuticals.
used to be a conspiracy theory, but Havana syndrome was brought up in Tulsi Gabbard's hearing today.
Yeah.
Right. These are things that we know are happening. We don't know who's doing them. I mean, we might have our suspicions, but they do that. And then go back to MK Ultra. We create these situations where we
100%.
can wash your brain.
Yes.
And then turn everyone
So,
into a possible agent.
the reason we bring this up is that anytime they want to try to take your guns, this is what they do. They do a giant thing, and then they're like, "We got to pass legislation to get rid of the,
Activated fear ritual.
I mean, so
Are you going?
yeah, the Second Amendment, the pro Second Amendment groups have had win after win after win in the past, 10, 15 years. And that leads me to question, like we're very quick to be like, oh, the government wants to control the people, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that the considerable gains the Second Amendment has made, because there's now 29 states that are constitutional carry in the country, over half the country, you don't need a license or anything to carry a gun, and gun violence has not gone up in as these laws have been liberalized. Do you think that because the government has the ability to track everyone and has so much control over everyone because of things like surveillance and because of the phones in our pocket, do you think that's why they have allowed these laws to pass with such little pushback? Because I feel like the pushback has actually gone down. I feel like Mothers Against Gun Violence, or all the gun violence organizations, I feel like they don't have the same oomph since probably the Florida shooting that created David Hogg's career.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah,
so
I forget
crazy,
the name of the school, but since that one, it's been nothing but loss. Do you think that that's because the government is more capable of monitoring the American people now?
If you're asking me, it's because the narrative has changed. The internet is a free flowing of ideas, and people are now seeing like, oh, who are the people that took away all the guns? Who did all that? People start to realize that there's danger in all that. Now, maybe you're correct in that the winning of these cases has changed that, but I personally think people have been starting to wake up to what happens when you take away guns. Mm-hmm. And that to me, and then people are I feel like the Vegas shooting was such a big moment. It's the first time that the powers that be had a narrative, and instantly everyone's like, nah, I don't buy that at all. That doesn't make any sense to me. And they quietly walked away from it, to the point where during the Trump situation, are we allowed to say that? What happened? Are we allowed to say assassination? The Trump assassination attempt. Okay, attempts. You saw this almost what Obama talked about, like flooding the town square with sewage. All of a sudden, three different shooters are instantly out. Nobody knows what's really going on. Mm-hmm. That's to me. So I think I think people are becoming more and more savvy, and they're waking up in these kind of outside of LA, Chicago, and New York are waking up to what's really happening.
We don't know anything about that kid. He never had any cult. He never no social media, no culinary silverware or whatever. He was just weirdest person in the whole
They
world.
cremated his body without telling him.
Whenever there's cremations, you got to ask questions.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.